Welcome, everybody. I'm Costa Macris, the founder and facilitator of ETletsTalk.com and the ETletsTalk Community. I want to welcome you all to this People's Disclosure Movement webinar. Today is March 9, 2019, and we have a few friends from the community gathered here with us to hopefully share some stories and to give you some information about the People's Disclosure Movement. Now, I realize that with a mixed audience, some people already know about ET Let's Talk and the People's Disclosure Movement, and some people may not. We hope that this particular video will get shared a lot over the internet, over social media. So in order to give some people who aren't familiar with this background, I'm going to be doing some talking about the People's Disclosure Movement and about my background and how I got here to be doing this. And then I want to turn it over to those of you who want to speak up and share your stories with the rest of the world and the community. I know that sounds amazing. Share your stories with the rest of the world. For this issue, this topic of ET contact, depending on where you are in your circumstance, it can be a very brave thing to reveal yourself, to tell your stories, to kind of, come out of that ET closet and let the rest of the world know that you've had experiences. But that's the taboo we're trying to break right now. And that's why I want to thank everybody who has shown up here and all the people who will be listening and watching out there for having the courage to keep an open mind about this topic, to make their own ET contact, and maybe to teach others and share their stories with other people. That's what the People's Disclosure Movement really is about. So about ETletsTalk.com, we're a community of 20,000 people in more than 100 countries. And we've been active since 2013 and are growing daily. Actually, it was 2012 when I started the ET Let's Talk community. And now we're making daily, weekly, monthly, some people hourly contact, self-initiated, human-initiated contact with our star friends. They've actually asked us to call them their star brothers, sisters, and cousins. In terms of we are family is what they tell us. So it's a growing community. I wish it were 10 times and 100 times as big. But we've made a start, and like I said, we're 20,000 people in 100 countries. During the last, I want to say, 8 complete years, we're now in our 9th year, we've been doing the Global CE5 Initiative, which is a Saturday, a 24-hour period every month during the last 8+ years, where our entire community gets together in a virtual way through our imaginations, and then we link up with each other in order to do our contact during that 24-hour period as a group. I like to think of it as a big group welcome to our star friends, a resonant field that we're creating that shows that we're peaceful human beings who want to initiate and make contact with our star friends and get a dialogue going. So the idea is to keep doing that month after month as we have been, and I want to thank all the people who are listening and watching who have been part of that. It's been a really powerful building block for all of us, as well as for us to learn that we're not alone. People have been sharing their stories from these monthly ET contact events that the Global CE5 Initiative has been sponsoring. So that really is the core of the People's Disclosure Movement. It's practice. There's a lot of information out there, but the whole idea is to actually make the contact, to find a group, do it yourself, and then to find someone else and teach them how to do it, and then ask them to teach someone else and keep it going and growing organically like that. So that's really what we're all about at the core. It's nothing very complicated. It's very evolutionary, and in a way it's pretty revolutionary, because the People's Disclosure Movement is the what I believe to be, and as far as I know, the world's largest widespread attempt, coordinated and regular attempt at human ET contact on the planet at this time. And we want to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'll tell you why we want to increase our teams as I start telling you the story of how I got here. Before I start on my personal journey, which I hope gets the juices going for all of you to share with us for a few minutes, some of your thoughts and some of your experiences. So before I start on my journey and how I got here, I do want to do a little bit of a commercial for ET Let's Talk. I want to encourage people to, again, share this video webinar, have yourself and your friends, like-minded friends and family and colleagues, come to ETletsTalk.com, join for free. You'll be able to join a community there where it's safe to be telling your stories, where you can upload videos and pictures. You can communicate with other members, create profiles. It's a social interactive platform that doesn't spy on you and has no commercials and things like that other platforms have out there. So I encourage you, again, membership is free. You can also go to the map there and find other members that are near you geographically. I also encourage people who go to the map to, even if someone's not near you, because our movement isn't big enough that no matter where you are, there's someone guaranteed to be next door. Sadly, that's not the case yet. But it's still possible and desirable to reach out to people that maybe aren't near you. You can make friends that way. And it's happened more than once that when you reach out to maybe someone halfway around the world and chat with them, you discover that they know somebody who's living down the street from you that's interested in this. And that has happened, and it's pretty amazing when it does. And that's why I encourage people just to make those connections on the map and start talking to each other. This is all about community. The last little commercial I want to make is we do hold retreats at ET Let's Talk 3 times a year, where I get people together in 3 locations. This year will be in Mount Shasta from June 2nd to June 7th. That's in Northern California. And then in the American Midwest in Bloomington, Indiana, September 22nd. It's a Sunday, 6 days and nights in Bloomington. And finally, in Southern California, Joshua Tree. Many people are familiar with that, the national park there in that area. In October 20th, for 6 days and nights, we'll be having a retreat. Now, the retreats are very affordable. I try to keep them very low cost compared to other similar retreats, so that everyday people can afford them and can afford to make the trip and join us. It's great to have a community online, but I'll tell you, at these retreats, I find that people make new friends, myself included, and getting together in a group physically and getting out under the stars like we do for 6 nights is just amazing, because you have a real group experience that is enhanced way more than what even an individual could have. So I encourage people to come to ETletsTalk.com/retreats and register there, again, for Mount Shasta, Bloomington, Indiana, or Joshua Tree, or all 3. All the information is on ETletsTalk.com/retreats. So having said all that, what is amazing to me after many years of talking to thousands of you is that everybody has a story. Actually, that shouldn't be amazing. We all have stories. And the fact that we're interested in this particular topic of ET contact and doing this Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind filters us in a certain way. We're automatically really interesting people from one end of the spectrum to the other. No matter what our political or social or other beliefs are, what we have in common is this belief or knowing that we're not alone in the universe, and that we may have had experiences. Some of us can't talk about them. Some of us have had to quiet them in their families and in their lives, and others have been lucky to be able to share. And that's why I created the ET Let's Talk community. It's a place where people can come as a safe place to tell their stories and to meet others like them in the community that can support them. And we can all learn from each other. I'm telling you, I've heard more amazing ET contact stories than I ever thought possible, just by sharing with all of you and having you share with me over the years. Another good thing about the website at ETletsTalk.com is you can upload your stories and have other people see as posts what you've experienced and share theirs. So again, it's about community. So you may ask, how did I get here? The People's Disclosure Movement, why was it formed? Actually, let me back up. Let me give a big umbrella description of the People's Disclosure Movement. Some of us, myself included, over the years, have been waiting and pushing and cajoling and nagging and petitioning governments or other institutions, not just the US government, but around the world, to have that big press conference where a prime minister, a president, a chancellor, somebody comes forward and says, oh yeah, we know we have star visitors. Extraterrestrials have been visiting, and we've been covering it up for 70 years. Sorry about that, but we've been lying and manipulating and been telling you that you're all crazy. Now, I'm being a little bit, I don't know, smarmy about that, but that's in essence what they would have to do, whether it's a slow leaking disclosure or a big announcement. For people who've been waiting for governments to make that kind of announcement, they would basically have to say, we have been lying and covering up, and then try to give all kinds of reasons. And people would have a range of reactions from that. People have invested a lot of time, books, interviews, what have you, waiting for these announcements to come, either slowly or suddenly. What I'm saying with the People's Disclosure Movement is something radical, which is very simple, which is stop waiting. Stop giving your power away to those others and beseeching them to give you the information that you already know. And instead, join the People's Disclosure Movement, because every time we make contact in the field, every single one of you, any given day, any given week, over and over again, we are disclosing. We go from being at first believers in something and being open-minded to when after we have our contact, we become knowers. And that expands the field of knowingness. And then we teach somebody else and they someone else. And that's how we grow the People's Disclosure Movement. We disclose. We, the people, disclose. We take our power back from the authorities and we make it happen. For those who want disclosure and want to see that in their future, what I say is the best way to predict the future is to create it. So in the People's Disclosure Movement, we're creating the disclosure, and we are the disclosure that we want to see. Let me give you some numbers to help you with this, to realize that you're not alone. There is a firm in the Netherlands who did some research in 2015 and 2016 about global adult attitudes towards extraterrestrial life. Now, they asked a lot of questions, and it was the largest research study that's ever been done on this topic. It covered, as a demographic, many different cultures, many different languages, different countries, different belief systems, etc., so that you could say it was more or less kind of representative of humanity. And that's what makes that particular research really important once you hear the conclusions. So they asked a lot of questions about ETs in different varieties. I will boil down for you the research, which finally I was able to extend it because I have I have a math background, and so I took some of their data and extended it to the whole population, not just to their relatively small sample of 24,000 people. Here's what I found, and that is that there are 1.3 billion, that's a billion with a B, adults on this planet from age 18 to 64 who believe that extraterrestrial life exists. And it's not just a microbe under a rock somewhere, it's a full-on civilization, societies. They believe that it exists, and they further believe that we should be communicating with these beings, if that's possible. So bingo, that is exactly the sweet spot where we are here in the People's Disclosure Movement. We are those people in that small yet very large core, part of the 1.3 billion who believe that they're up there, and many of us already here, and that we should communicate. That's what our disclosure movement's about. And we have a lot of company. And that's what I want to emphasize to people who are watching this and listening to this, that you are not alone. 1.3 billion is a huge number. We're all around. And what I further say is, granted, half of those 1.3 billion, or maybe 40%, 50%, are people who may be looking for their next meal the next day. This is not an equitable world. They're starving. They're having to feed their families. So even though they may have these beliefs, their lives really are centered around survival the next day. So they're not going to be pulling out lawn chairs like we have the freedom to do that, let's say, or the leisure time and make contact. But yet the seeds are planted with them there, that someday when more contact becomes open and possible with our star friends, these people will be ready to accept all sorts of things as these star beings come and engage us more and share with us some of their technologies that will improve our lives. So that's kind of the big picture. Disclosure is really not just about the lights in the sky and making the communication. That's the beginning. I really believe it's about a cooperation between us and our star friends. And they're very willing to engage with us and talk with us. And they really want to be walking among us, but it's a complicated situation. And I will say, and this is part of my story, which I keep saying I'll get to, but this isn't a more appropriate time to mention this. And that is, why do we do this disclosure? Is it just to capture videos and talk about it with our friends and go ooh and ah? Well, it is. I enjoy that too. But let's keep in mind there are spiritual intelligences that are piloting these craft. They come from many star systems. There are beings that want to interact with us. And so it's more than just about the lights in the sky. But what's the end game? And why are we doing this? How did this get started? And I will say that I had a conversation with my star friends a number of years ago when I was contemplating starting the People's Disclosure Movement. I knew there were lots of people like yourselves out there wanting to make contact, but nobody was yet organizing them in any kind of regular, coordinated way, the way that we are organized now with our monthly meditations, our daily ones, etc. That had not been organized yet. So I asked my star friends, I would like to do some organizing. I come from that kind of a background. I'm a spiritual and political activist from the 60s, and I like to organize. Would it be of value to you, I asked them, in the larger plans of how you're engaging humanity, if many of us humans started interacting with you, trying to contact you on a regular basis? I had a full-time job then as a software engineer in the Silicon Valley, and I knew that this would be a labor-intensive thing, so I did not want to undertake any kind of organizing that would consume even more time. That's why I asked them that question. Is this of value to you? The immediate answer was yes. And they had a request of me, which actually is a request of all of us, which is create as many ET contact teams as possible in as many places as possible, as quickly as possible. Very straightforward. 3 items there. And that's all I've been doing and focusing on since then. I did ask them, well, how does that work if we create the teams? What's the process? What's the dynamic? They said that by us doing that, we give them more permission to appear, human permission to appear in the skies of many more cities around the world. And that's literally how they put it, appearing in more places with human permission. They further said that as they appeared in more cities, more humans would see them, thereby giving them permission to appear in even more cities and places. And that would mean more humans would see them, giving them even more permission. So you can see organically how that works. They called this a virtuous circle. And they said that someday a tipping point would be reached where so many people around the world had seen them, interacted with them, and were positive about them, that it would then become impossible for any government or any authoritarian institution to ever again cover up their presence, lie about them, and manipulate public opinion about them. That's the people's disclosure. And that's what we're in the middle of doing right now. I just mentioned to you, that's how it started with me. And I've been devoting my life to creating more of those teams, urging all of you out there to create your own networks like I have and keep the networks going, networks within networks, and growing this movement, because the future is in our hands now. And that's a powerful thing, because we're going to trust ourselves more than we trust someone else who has another agenda to lie to us. So if nothing else that I leave you with today, those of you who are listening, if I leave you with nothing else, I'm going to leave you with this, which is take the power, make the contact, come to ETletsTalk.com, become a free member, learn the protocol to make your contact, and spread it to other people. We have the power now to be the disclosure. We are the disclosure. And that's a beautiful thing, because what we further know is that our experience has been these civilizations that are visiting us are positive. As we create the disclosure, we will create the possibility, the probability, the certainty that someday they will walk with us and work with us. And I say to people, imagine the technologies. We've all heard of free energy. There'll be healing technologies. There'll be an ability for us to end poverty and war, injustice on our planet. Won't happen overnight. Will take a lot of work, but we'll have a lot of assistance from those who are our elder brothers, sisters, and cousins, as they put it. So that's kind of the end game. That's the big umbrella of, for me, what the People's Disclosure Movement is about. And again, it's all in our hands. We have that power, and we should use it, and we should teach others. So having said that, I want to give you a little bit of my background story, and then I will open it up to those of you who have said that you want to share some of your contact stories, because what I want to do moving forward is if this is successful, if those of you in the community find this kind of interaction valuable to you, we can do this every month or every other month, where you all show up and share with each other. You know, it's great to do it, typing and on social media, but sometimes hearing someone's voice and seeing their face, etc., is even more powerful. And I want to foster the sense of community between all of us by offering these kinds of webinars, so that you can all speak up and not just have to listen to me drone on and on. But I don't want to hear from you all. I started out, I was born in Indiana in 1953. So my childhood was spent in the 60s being influenced by the big news of the day. No matter what you think of NASA today, and there's a great deal of controversy, back then NASA was the major public game in town, and they were doing the moonshots. It captured the attention of many young people, myself included, in those days, so that my eyes were always on the skies. I had a telescope. I was interested in astronomy. I read a lot of science fiction. And one day when I picked up a UFO book, my very first one, it was a classic picture on the cover of that book of a dome and a saucer-shaped object. And back in the 50s, when the early contactee movement began, people didn't have Photoshop. So a lot of the pictures that they managed to capture back then, in my opinion, you could rely on a lot more to be authentic. So when I saw that particular picture in this book as a young man, I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, I was smitten. And I looked at all the other black and white pictures, and I just knew that life was out there and life was here in our skies, and they were contacting us. But I went on to live what I call like a really conventional life here in the United States. Went to college, got a degree in computer science and mathematics, a minor, and graduated, went to work in the Silicon Valley, got married, had kids, got divorced, got remarried. And then in 2006, I discovered that there were people here in Northern California going out to Mount Shasta and spending nights making human-initiated contact. this was a really novel thing to me that we could do that instead of Close Encounters 1 through 4, which are passive experiences. This CE5, Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, was our ability to initiate the contact, make the contact, and continue the communication. So I went. I remember telling my wife, Hollis, many of you know her and have seen this on interviews, and others don't, but she was very open-minded. And I asked her, would you come with me for a week to Mount Shasta to join this group under the stars and make contact? Isn't this cool? She said, it's a big universe. I know that there's life everywhere. They're out there, they're here, but I don't understand what it has to do with my daily life. I've got businesses to run. I got to pay my bills. But you go ahead, she said to me, have fun, have a good time. I support you. And that was good. So I spent 6 nights there making contact and seeing the lights in the sky and entering this whole new universe of contact. And 2 things happened, actually 3, but I'll mention 2 things happened during that week that changed the course of my life so that I'm talking to all of you now, that got me onto this path. The first thing is that one night after our group meditation had ceased, it was probably 11, maybe midnight, at the foot of the mountain, Mount Shasta. Much of the group was disbanding, going to their cars and going back to their hotels. About 10 of us still hung around, and we were in a clearing there where we had just finished doing our meditations and making contact during the night, the usual thing that was happening to us successfully. At one point, as we're talking, someone tugged on my sleeve and pointed off to my right, maybe about 8 feet away, not any more than that, and said, look at that. And I looked at where this person was pointing, and I saw a slowly materializing sphere, maybe about 6 feet in diameter. And it was just almost like a fade-in, like you would see it in special effects in a movie. It was becoming more solid apart from the background. And I rubbed my eyes, was it the moon? Was it the shadows or something? But no, everybody, all the other adults who were standing around, we were all looking at the same thing. This sphere materialized out of thin air. It wasn't quite solid, but it was solid looking. It was opaque and gray, and I couldn't see inside of it. And it was floating above the floor of the forest there a few inches noiselessly. And there was no other kind of environmental thing going on. There was no wind, no other sound that I recall, just all of us whispering to each other. One of the people from across our circle, as we watched this thing happening, going like, we can't believe this is happening so close to us. But one of the people said to the group, hey, I just got a telepathic message from the beings who are inside of this sphere, this craft. And they tell me that they are scientists who are here on Earth researching the human energy field. So I thought, great, we are somebody's PhD thesis, right? We're the field research. Okay, that's cool. That got them here. So that gave us a little bit of context. Now, to finish the story and why this was already gobsmacking to me, but got even better, the woman to the right of me who was standing there, a friend of mine who had been part of our group, named, named Gloria, it's a pseudonym, was standing like this with her arms straight out for half an hour while this particular starcraft was floating there. And she wasn't moving, stiff like a board, vertical. And I knew something was going on with her, but I didn't want to interrupt it. And yet I was close enough that in case she showed any signs of distress, I would be right there to help her. After about half an hour of us whispering and looking at this thing, Gloria suddenly got unstable and looked like she was going to fall. And I grabbed her by the shoulders and asked her, her name. Do you know where you are? How are you doing? And she was a little bit rattled, but she was okay. And what she told me was during that half hour where she had been immobile and standing there, try holding your arms out like this for half an hour. I don't think it's so easy. But during that half hour, what had happened was that one of the beings from inside that craft had approached her telepathically. She was a pretty psychic lady, and so this was probably easy for them to do. But this being approached her and asked her if he, she, or it could merge with her energy field to study it. And what presence of mind this woman had. Many of us would have probably said no, or get me out of here, or I'm not so sure. But what she did was she said, you can do that, but I have 3 conditions. And those are, number 1, that I remain aware and conscious of what's going on, don't want to be knocked out. And the being agreed to that. And number 2, she said, was that you leave when I tell you to leave. And the being agreed to that. And the 3rd condition was that there would be no messing around with her sexual organs, no probes and things like that. And the being agreed to that. So at the point where I saw her become unstable was the point where she had finally said, after that half hour, time to go, bye-bye, and the being left. And as I'm sitting there talking to her and hearing her story, I look at the starcraft there and it starts dematerializing, just slowly fading out again, like it was a special effect, and it was gone. So this was my up close and personal experience that nobody could ever take from me. I had had friends all my life that had UFOs hover over their cars, the classic thing, shine down a light noiselessly, their motor would go off. I had a friend who saw a mothership with 4 other women in the New Mexico desert, I believe, with a tractor beam. Did not harm them or anything, but then let them go and the ship went off. But this was the first time I had my own wide-eyed, very conscious, very sober, up close and personal experience. And I'll tell you, that changes your life when something like that happens in front of you, because for me, it violated the laws of physics I had been told were operating. Just that half hour just kind of scrambled everything I thought I knew about physics, because what I had just experienced was not supposed to happen, but it did, and it was in the company of 9 other people. So that sent me on this path. I thought to myself, I want more of this contact. How do I get more involved? And that set the stage for me to start forming this community. The other thing that happened, and then I'll finish up and we can talk together. The other thing that happened during that week that further cemented my beginning with the People's Disclosure Movement and the Global CE5 Initiative is that every morning I was calling my wife back home, the one who said, go, I support you, but I don't see what it has to do with my life. And I was telling her about the previous night's experiences. All this stuff was very new to me. So she was hearing about the lights in the sky, the zigzagging lights, the flash bulbs pulsing, the orbs in the trees, just a whole range of communication. She was hearing about that. And along about, I think about the 4th morning, as I was getting ready to tell her about the previous night's experiences, she stopped me. And actually, she tells the story better than I because she experienced it. But since she's not here, I'll paraphrase it all. What happened was the night before, as she prepared to go to bed, she turned out the light. She was in bed, and as she puts it, she was scooching down to get under the covers. And at the foot of the bed with her physical eyes, even though she's clairvoyant and is a professional clairvoyant, she has only inner vision. So what she saw at the foot of her bed was with her physical eyes were 4, maybe 5 little beings that were white, about 3, maybe 4 feet tall, somewhat translucent, with large heads, large eyes, small mouths, thin torso. She couldn't see their legs because the edge of the bed was hiding the lower part of their body. But there they were. She was shocked to see them. She wasn't afraid, but just shocked. She had never been interested in science fiction or anything like that, the way I had been. So seeing them was like a total departure from the reality she had always known. And the major thing is, she was shocked, like she said, and she couldn't talk because she was just so shocked. But she felt waves of love coming off of them. And as she says, how can you be afraid when there's that much love? It was just love enveloping her from them. And she heard their thoughts slowly in her mind. And what they said was, who are you? And she couldn't think of anything to ask them until finally she just said, I have to ask them something. Where are you from? Today, she says that the better question would have been, how did you get here? but that's, hindsight is 2020 there. So they slowly formed the words in her mind, Arcturus. And as she admits, she may have heard the term Arcturus before, even though she wasn't interested in astronomy as such. And maybe that came up from her subconscious, but she really believes that that's what they told her. And so she asked me, as she told this story, my jaw hit the ground. I was not prepared to hear anything like this. She just silenced me right there with that amazing story. Oh, because by the way, after a couple of minutes of them being there, they just kind of slowly faded out. And she went to sleep, had a good night's rest after that kind of life-changing experience. So she asked me, is Arcturus a place? And I go, yeah, it is. It's like Astronomy 101. I believe it's a super red giant star. It is a place. And there are people who claim they have communicated with Arcturians, that they're here visiting us. So that kind of fits in with the UFO/ET culture, which you just told me. And then what she said to me was, then this is the woman who said, I don't know what they have to do with my life. I have businesses to run. What she said to me was, next year, I'm coming with you. And she's been joining me every year after that as we've been making contact and have come up with lots more up close and personal stories than the ones that you've just heard. So that's how I got started. That's why I have the conviction of a true believer, because now I'm a knower. And any of you who've gone from being a believer to a knower know what I'm talking about. You carry it from here and you speak it with authenticity because you were there and nobody can take it from you. And that's why I'm doing this movement now. I believe that the future of the earth depends on us behaving well as humans, growing this movement, engaging our star friends, and having them cooperate with us, which they're willing to do and anxious to do in creating a golden age on earth. And in other webinars, I'll be talking more about that part. But for now, I want to hear from you, the community, those of you who want to speak up. I'm going to pick on you first, Mr. Rob Smith. And Rob, you should know, is my wonderful audio video editor who's devoted many volunteer hours to making these webinars possible. And I want to thank him publicly for all the time that he's put in. Rob's also an experiencer, like all of us, and he's got stories. So I'm going to unmute him here.
Yes, well, thank you, Costa, for those nice, kind words. I'm a video guy. I was doing production work down in New Orleans when I first heard about ET Let's Talk. I actually ran into a hybrid down there who sort of appeared in my life from nowhere. I mean, I don't know where this guy, he drove up in his van one day and started talking, and he never shut up. It was really kind of funny. Well, he told me I needed to get a hold of Costa and gave me his website and said that I needed to help promote ET Let's Talk and to help Costa in his mission to bring disclosure to the people. And so I've been doing that. I happened to join the project, right? I guess it was the second or third episode of Saturday with Sheehan. So I got a chance to edit some of those and be involved with that project for a while. And I hope this project will take off too. It's a very worthwhile venture. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have always known, ever since I was, really young, I knew that there were ETs out there. I saw a spacecraft when I was younger, and every once in a while I'd see one. And I guess my last visual sighting was in, I guess, the late 80s. I was scuba diving off the coast of Southern California, San Diego, and I was out in the bay, resting in the boat, watching the city lights and all. There was a light coming across the city. Well, there was a no-fly ordinance. No airplanes were allowed to go in the air after 10 o'clock, and it was a night dive because we were out going after lobster and things. And so, well, I continued to watch this light, and then it just sort of paused for a little while and then went straight up. I mean, it accelerated out of the atmosphere. Impossible flight characteristics for any kind of airplane. So it wasn't too spectacular. I sat there and went, okay. But since I'd met Costa, I've been practicing telepathic communications with extraterrestrials. And this is an ongoing thing. I've had some pretty good results. The first few times that I attempted it were a little difficult, and I was well. Let's just say they taught me the hard way how not to do telepathic communications with extraterrestrials. So I learned right away some of the ropes and have had some pretty rewarding experiences since then. They have given me healings, for one thing. I had Lyme disease.
Wow.
Caught it back in 2001, I guess. I had a tick bit me on the arm, and I saw the little bullseye spread out across my arm, and I said, "Oh no!" And so, of course, I have an inherent mistrust of all things in the medical industry, and so I didn't go for antibiotics or anything like that. And it was a creeping kind of malaise that was in my joints, connective tissue. And one of the first successful contacts I had with ETs, I asked them for healing, and they sent a specialist who did something. I'm not sure exactly what it was. But the Lyme disease symptoms have vanished and have not returned since then.
All right. That's dramatic, Rob. That's dramatic, because I've known other people years later who are still fighting Lyme disease and trying everything under the sun for that. So I know how difficult to get rid of it and to live with it is. To hear your story, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's my understanding it's impossible to get rid of, because it's a spirochete that actually blends with the genetic material of different kinds of cells in the body and disguises itself that way. So the immune system can't get rid of it. Antibiotics have no effect.
There you go. Okay, thanks for that. If we have time, we'll circle back. But thank you, Rob. That's the kind of stuff that I love to hear about in the community. There's so many success stories. Debs, I'm going to pick on you next, as soon as I can see your smiling face there.
I'm Debs Shakti, and I've been working with Brother Costa for several years, and I won't go into all that because it just takes up too much time. Just know that I really admire your work, Costa. I'm so grateful for all of the self-sacrifice that you put forth for this community. It's important. It's the most important thing, I believe, in our time right now. And I have been told that by my ET guides, the main ones who go by just the label, the teachers. It's a conglomerate. But they do say this is the most important work right now for humankind. And so I have had constant contact since my earliest memories, basically, and thought everybody else did too. I just thought that was the way of the world until I got slapped in the face with the non-reality, if you will, of the Matrix, where people were, my parents especially, and then nuns in Catholic school and everything, saying that's not real and you have to stop talking about it. But my very first memory was of these little, what I thought were little monkeys, white-faced, big black-eyed monkeys in the tree outside of my window when I was about 3 years old, tapping on the window and talking in my mind, saying, "Come out and play with us."
Oh my God.
So telepathy at age 3. And I won't go into the whole story of it. I got in big trouble after several times of trying to go ask my mom for permission to go outside in the middle of the night to play with the monkeys in the tree. So, but the essential note of that is that after several times of trying to get her to let me go outside in the middle of the night, she just, of course, a mother of 4 babies. I was the oldest. She was pregnant with my youngest brother, but of 3 children, 1 coming on the way. She was exhausted, and she just said, "I don't ever want to hear about that ever again, or I will spank you." And that was my biggest fear at age 3, was getting a spanking from my mother. So I never talked about them again. But my whole life, my childhood, I had a whole other family that lay that was an overlay of my family life in my own house, of what I now know were ET beings. And they had distinct personalities, different life practices, and so forth. And I would talk to them all the time. Everybody just thought I was a highly imaginative child, but it was real. I saw my very first huge, almost like Close Encounters of the third type craft at age 9 when we moved from LA to southern Georgia with my brother, who was less than a year younger than I. He woke me up in the middle of the night one night. We lived on the edge of the military-based town that we had moved to, and there was a pine forest, about 60 miles of pine forest behind us. And he woke me up and said, "We have to go out in the woods. It's on fire." And why I thought that was a good idea, I don't know. But we got up, snuck out of the house, ran out into the woods to what we called our special spot. And there was this huge craft hovering with kind of fog, beautiful colored lights, no sound that I can remember. And then the next thing I remember, we were in our beds the next morning and woke up, and I said, "What was that?" And he said, "We can't ever talk about this. Don't ever talk about this. We'll get in trouble." So, fast forward through life, there was a bit of time there where I was told often enough not to talk about this anymore, that I just kind of put it in the back of my memory. But I always had telepathy. I've always been very psychic, healing, energy healing, channeling, all of this stuff. So back, thankfully I grew up in the tail end of the hippie years when all that was super cool and people were starting to talk about it. So I came out about it and began my studies proper about it, and was astounded at how many other people had these experiences, but they were all afraid to talk about it. So I just started learning more practices, honing my own stuff, and have had so many dramatic things happen in my life. As recently as yesterday, had a daytime sighting of a round kind of oval ship glistening with lights, red and green lights.
Wow.
In a cloud-covered day in the daylight as I was driving home. So
Wow.
I have deep, what one of my ET teachers calls telepathy. It's not just telepathy, it's telepathy. You get all the information. I have a deep connection with them, and I spend most of my time teaching other people how to develop those skills, because we all have them. And they are literally charging people like us to do this work. So as Costa, you said, there becomes a tipping point where there's no denying. Well, we're getting there. And in fact, they have told me that we have surpassed the tipping point for them needing permission to intervene in certain instances. And you will start seeing that intervention now, because there have been enough people either asking them, or, they just hear people doing things like praying, saying, "Please stop this madness." So they say that humankind has surpassed that particular tipping point where that law of non-interference is no longer valid. And they are here to help us. And they will do it in the most discreet, caring, and gentle ways that won't upset everybody's belief system and make them all feel like they're crazy, because there's that.
Mm-hmm.
But they are working on it very, very diligently with us as the progenitors of that work. So we're their instruments, if you will. They're the surgeons, we're the instruments. And that's what they say. So I'll leave it at that. I have so many other tales to tell, but
We'll save it for other webinars.
Yeah. everybody needs to tell their stories too. But I'm here to say it's real. I'm in. I'll do whatever I have to do.
And thank you for that update about the tipping point. I did not know that. It gives me a line of inquiry for my own star peeps to ask more about that. And maybe you and I can have more conversation, because you said in some areas it didn't sound like that intervention is okay in all areas, or am I overthinking that part.
Well, that's where it gets incredible. They're mainly talking about the military-industrial complex first and foremost, and the power complex being dismantled, basically enabled, not en, but in, being disabled. Okay, so I actually got this first message. It was early September of 2018, so just a few months ago, and have been working with them on that, asking for more clarity and asking for examples, and I see examples all over the place.
Oh, we need to talk. Yeah, that's one of my areas of interest. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me have the podium. That was great.
Oh, anytime. You're all special people. Anybody who bothered to take part of their Saturday morning or evening to to show up here, thank you. You know, this interruption in your lives, because just showing up shows how special you are. Most people might think we're crazy, but you know, more and more don't. So we're working on that part. We're getting to be normalized, I think. So good on all of you for staying the course. The other two people that said they would speak up, I don't see them on. So, let me just check one thing here. No, but so we could end right here, because I don't want to drag this out past we were already over an hour, but I kind of knew that would happen. I like to talk a lot, and I like to hear your stories, so I'll keep you talking all day if I can. Any of you who can see each other here, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to tell your story now that you've heard what we're doing. Aha, I see Rob over there.
Rob wants to.
Okay, Rob. Oh, you're unmuted, Rob. Okay, boy, you've been a good guy staying silent. Thank you. I missed on that. Go ahead.
I have.
Tell everyone who you are and where you are.
I'll probably struggle to tell my story in 2 minutes, but I'll try and condense it down. So basically, a very close friend of mine had an awakening, a major awakening, and now has like an incredible gift that he uses to heal as part of his job. I couldn't understand it personally myself, and it led to us falling out a little bit, and then something came over me one day, and it sort of said, look into it sort of more seriously. So I started to go through the internet, searching everything, went back through ancient times, lots of different mythologies, Egypt, you name it. I studied everything I could. And then I came across randomly a post on Facebook, which was a C5 retreat. And I thought, what's this? So I started looking into that, learned all about sort of, the protocols, and sort of get an understanding. And then I agreed to go, but it was more like I was compelled to go. It was like this burning desire inside me where I had to go. I couldn't explain it. And I came home to my wife and said, I'm going on a C5 expedition. And she went, oh, that's fine. And I said, but it's in Tenerife. And she was like, what? And I said, I'm going. And I went, I paid all the money to someone I'd never ever spoke to, never even met before in my life, traveled to Tenerife, met 23 other people on a remote location on a cliff hillside. And we just had multiple things going on. And it's from going from a complete skeptic to being right amongst the group with all this stuff going on. You just can't get your head around it. It's your brain is telling you it's not real. What's going on? And you constantly question yourself. Like, did I just feel that? Did I experience that? Did I see that? And it's like C5 to me is it's like therapy, but like an emotional therapy as well, where you go through so many emotions sort of with every single session. But to cut a long story short, after some amazing sort of nights, we retired for, I think it was the third night. I went back to my room. I had a friend from the Czech Republic who was like in the other bed in our room. He was fast asleep. I was laying down trying to sleep, and I just, for some reason, I could not sleep on my side. And I kept turning over onto my back and then going, no, I want to sleep on my side, turn to my side. But I just kept being pulled over onto my back. And I was like, I'm obviously not going to sleep. So I just stayed there, and literally on the wall in front of me, 6 feet away, this most amazing craft appeared on like a 45-degree angle, and it lit up the whole of the room where it glowed this like amazing silver, like an amazing silver colored light. And I stared, and it sort of appeared and then disappeared, and I thought, right, did I just see that? And then underneath it followed 3 brightly coloured arrows. One was red, then a green one, and then like an orange coloured one. And then underneath that, at the same angle, were like a reddy, purpley red orange honeycomb shape, all mixed together. So you imagine loads of little honeycombs, and then on the front ones had this small little piece that sort of came up and arched over. That came into view and then disappeared. So I was lying in bed thinking, what is this? And then all of a sudden, something swooshed from nowhere right up to my face, literally 2 centimeters away from my face, and then click, I was out. And I don't remember anything until the morning when I woke up. I opened my eyes and then literally leapt out of bed and started jumping around, screaming, saying, "You won't believe this! You will never believe what's happened!" And then started writing everything down. So that's sort of the crust of my like close contacts. And then ever since then, I'm like compelled. It's like my mission to try and educate everyone on, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. But unfortunately, I face, it's the ridicule factor, and Rob's mad, blah blah blah. He's been watching too many films, and I'm like, the only way I can explain to people now is really, if they want to believe it, they have to go and see it for themselves. They have to go and think, do you know what? I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go and do an expedition. Because, personally, that's how I think a majority of the people will actually start to understand when they're sat in a group with 10, 12, 20 people, and then they witness it with their own eyes. That's sort of my personal sort of thoughts on it. But I've been on 3 more expeditions since then, and they're just every one is amazing. It's like,
yeah. Well, you're a
can't
magnet now.
describe it.
They've got your signature, so you alone at least are a magnet, if not everyone else who's part of those expeditions.
Yeah, I mean, we came back from we went to Shasta last year to Enrique's event, because I wanted to learn some of Mission Rama's protocols, because they're sort of the same but slightly in a different. They all come about contact, but in a slightly different sort of way. And so my wife and I went to that, and we had some amazing sort of experiences there. But when we got back home, wow, it was like every night when we went outside to sit in the garden, no C5 protocols, nothing, no meditation, nothing. We would just go outside, sit on the chairs, start talking about a star, and then flashbulbs going off everywhere. It's like bonkers.
Yeah, that is
It's like,
amazing.
what is going on? It's like, wow. We've had some crazy stuff in our back garden, like amazing stuff.
I hear that from other people too, that once they've tuned into you like that, then they dispense with the meditation, and they can do, so good on you for having that kind of a close connection.
Yeah, it's almost like they give you a shortcut.
Yeah.
In some sort of respects, it's like they think, you don't need to sit and meditate for 40 minutes, and you don't need to not eat this and not eat that. Just go out, make a conscious connection to them, be in the right mind, send out like all your feelings from your heart, and place your mind in the right place, and like wallop. They're there already. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's great to get evidence like that. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. And I apologize. I realized you had been one of the people who also signed up to talk, and I didn't see you on my piece of paper. So I'm glad that you raised your hand to remind me. So
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but is there anybody else by a raise of hand here visually that wants to add? Because if not, we'll wrap it up and say our goodbyes. So I'll give you a chance to raise a hand or a foot. I'm not that flexible. I couldn't do that, but okay. Oh, wait. Debs, are you saying bye or are you wanting to talk? Oh, wait, I will unmute you, my friend. Debs is back.
I just wanted to say, I just put it on the chat, but just for the record, Costa, this kind of meeting is so important. It's so important because coherency is the key to this whole movement. The more that we can literally see and talk to each other and share our experiences with each other, it causes those shortcuts or those uplinks like Rob was just talking about getting, just by virtue of the fact that we are together. It's like building a neural network. The more you exercise your brain in a certain way, the more that neural network builds so that it's easier and easier for you to remember something. It's the same thing.
Oh, got it.
So I just felt very compelled to say that, and I just want to thank you for letting us do this.
Well, I want to thank you for showing up. I keep telling people, don't look to me. This is not my mission. I'm just a facilitator. And if nobody bothered to show up and do this stuff, I wouldn't have anything to do in terms of organizing. So, right, we each have a role. And it's a simple one. Just to open our mouth and talk to someone else that's safe, or to come together like this, it's like you said, powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I had never considered that this could do that, this gathering here.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking, do I want to keep doing these? A lot of people sign up and only a handful show up. So I kind of wonder. Well,
but then you don't know how many get to see it after the fact, and that's it's like a movie being released in DVD and stream. So many more people see the movie that way than they go to the theaters now. So you're on the cutting edge of this technology, and they're saying you have to keep doing this, or all of us have to keep doing this. This is the next step.
Okay, thank you for that. That's an encouraging thing, and I encourage all the rest of you to keep doing your networking. Otherwise, I will say thank you for showing up. And for people listening, come to ETletsTalk.com. Please share this video with others. We are the wave of the future, and we're the People's Disclosure Movement. So take care, everyone. Thank you.